Longlegs is a new horror movie that tells the story of FBI agent Lee Harker. When a bunch of murders happen across town in very similar ways, with a note always attached, signed by someone named Longlegs, Monroe has to figure out, or Harker, played by Monroe, has to figure out what exactly is happening. It's very much a procedural show in a lot of ways. It reminds you of things like Seven and Cure and Silence of the Lambs, all movies that this film almost certainly took inspiration from. I also thought some of the horror elements felt like, one of the shots in general felt like something straight out of David Lynch's Inland Empire. You could certainly see some inspirations that this movie is wearing on its sleeve, which I thought were pretty cool. Also, before I get too far into this review, just wanted to mention I am on Letterboxd. If you want to follow me on Letterboxd, Jackson Kruger, you can search me there. So yeah, there's that. But let's get back into the review. The biggest strength of this movie, in my opinion, is just the overall tone, which is always a difficult thing to really put your finger on. Like, how do you describe what is good tone or what is bad tone? But the moments that were supposed to be scary, to me, really scared me. It seems like the mileage has kind of varied on some people. Some people didn't find it scary at all. Some people it really worked on. It worked on me. I think the moments that were supposed to be frightening were frightening. The moments that were supposed to be creepy were creepy. I'm sorry, but that creepy doll thing was creepy. That freaked me out. It did. However, I do think this movie can kind of get bogged down in some of its flaws throughout. For example, the overall plot of this movie really didn't make a lot of sense to me. Trying to think about, when I watch a movie, I often like to put myself in the main character's shoes. What would I do in this situation? And a lot of the decisions that I felt like they were making, I just didn't fully get. In fact, in general, I do feel like the character of Lee Harker was a bit of a weakness here, as well. She does have some character quirks. I wouldn't necessarily call, it's pretty clear she's on the spectrum. They don't explicitly state that, but that appears to be what they are attempting to show with her. I wouldn't call that a character quirk, but that is a part of her as a character. She also is someone who is very driven, very determined to be, to be able to help solve this. Other than that, though, I didn't think she gave me a lot. She didn't really change throughout the course of the movie. There was really no, significant character arc. She sort of felt like a vehicle for the rest of the movie to happen, which, again, it's a horror movie. I don't, that is sometimes a part of these things, but, still, it is something that I think maybe this movie could have been better had we had some stronger character moments. And like I said, some of the decisions just didn't make a ton of sense to me. I can't really get into it without getting into spoilers, but yeah, some of the plotting moments, like one plotting moment that I just didn't fully understand is it's kind of set up that she can't really sleep at night. And she goes to investigate a murder, and it's shot as though it's in the morning that she's going to investigate the murder. She then goes to talk to her boss at work, and they mention that the place they want to go to is 90 miles away. Okay, let's go there. And then they show up, and now it's nighttime. So I'm kind of like, did a whole day pass? I told that to my fiance, and she said she actually thinks it was really cloudy, not nighttime, which I guess that could be. But then they go into the barn, and then sunlight's coming through. So was it cloudy, and then it the clouds opened up midway through? Again, these aren't things that ruin the movie for me, but these are things that I do notice when I watch them. So I think that, and I could mention more. I'm not really I don't want to spend 90% of the video talking about that, so I'll just move on. I do think if you are someone, though, that really likes the, stories to be kind of airtight, and I shouldn't say story, but the plotting to be airtight, this might not be the one for you, as some of the stuff really, quite frankly, more confused me than excited me when it came to the plot. And like I said, the character didn't have a ton of, in my opinion, a ton of stuff going for her. So as of right now, it kind of sounds like I'm bashing the movie, but the reality is I did really have a good time with this film. I thought that the creepy elements of it, like I said, really did work for me. So even though there were parts that took me out of the film, I think for the most part, I was enjoying my experience. I think the other thing that this movie does a really good job of is just having a mystery around this. Who is Longlegs? What's going on? Which is interesting. And who is Longlegs? Well, it's played by Nick Cage, who is going full Nick Cage in this movie. Nick Cage does not know how to half-ass a role. He is someone who goes for it. And I would say he's going for it even more than your typical Nick Cage going for it performance. He's doing a lot in this. You can tell that the way it was written was probably not the way that it was intended to be. There's a scene where he sings "Happy Birthday," and one of the things that made me laugh, I didn't laugh out loud because I'm in a crowded theater, and it wasn't like a funny thing, but the person pauses the screen after he's singing "Happy Birthday" and says, "This goes on for 23 minutes," which just the visual to me of him just sitting in a room singing "Happy Birthday" for 23 straight minutes is just I wish they should have just put that in the movie. Have 23 minutes of that. I would have watched all of it. I honestly think it's one of those things where if you like just read the Wikipedia plot summary of this movie, you'd probably think it's a disaster. Like I said, there's a lot of plot elements that don't really make sense. It's a very silly movie. I'll get into spoilers after I give my rating to talk about the ending, but definitely I think the ending, I see that's a very controversial part of it. But to me, this is the kind of movie where if you like atmospheric tension, if you're someone who, when you go to see a horror movie, you want to see spooky things, and more so than like ironclad plot beats, well then, this is the movie for you. That's kind of what I wanted to see. I liked Longlegs. I did. I thought this was an entertaining movie, and I'm willing to forgive the faults because of the good parts that it gave to me. Again, not everything about this movie worked for me. Yes, there were moments that I thought were a little bit silly, and like, I'll be honest, the Nick Cage juxtaposition with the creepy moments always jumped out because the creepy moments were taken so seriously and Nick Cage was so goofy. It was just kind of interesting because it felt like certain parts of the movie were not meant to be taken that seriously and certain parts were meant to be taken like super seriously, which is just I think there's a bit of tonal whiplash there, although they were both tones that I enjoyed, which is a unique scenario. Usually when that happens, there's one tone you like and one tone you don't, and that's why it's weird. This was just two separate tones, although it still felt a bit clunky at times. It felt a bit like, I think they could have smoothed out maybe some of the jumps, in my opinion. For me, it would have worked a little better. But some of the, again, it's weird where I just saying like, the creepy moments were creepy, so I liked it. Feels like a bit of a, like, I feel like I'm not getting in depth with my praises for this movie, but the reality is, it's a genre movie. If it does what the genre part is supposed to do, I'm going to like this movie. There's comedies that I like, that some of the plotting doesn't make a ton of sense, but they make me laugh, so I like it. That's kind of how I view Longlegs as well. I don't think it's a game changer for me. I would also say that when it gets to more of the supernatural side of things, that's usually not as much of my thing. I'm not someone who is religious, so like that stuff doesn't scare me the way it might scare someone who is religious. I think you could also make some comparisons with this movie and Hereditary. I do think that, Hereditary has great moments in it, and it's just a great movie in general, but I would say that kind of the ending part isn't my favorite part of it. I don't hate the ending, but it's not like, that's just not my favorite part of that movie. Although I would say that the first time I watched Hereditary, I liked it a lot more on a rewatch once I knew what was going on. Maybe this will be similar, but as of right now, to be honest, I'm not sure if it's a movie I have not much interest in rewatching. I think I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for me. I enjoyed it. I liked what it was going for, but I did not think it was. I thought it was a silly horror movie that is pretty fun. So that's kind of how I would rate it. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts, spoiler free. Let's get into spoilers now. Let's talk about some of the things I've touched on earlier. So, okay, spoiler warning, 3, 2, 1. If you haven't seen it yet, turn the video off now, come back after you've seen it, or if you just don't care about spoilers, well, then let's get into it. So the ending is the main thing I think we have to talk about, as it gets wild. It gets out there, where it's kind of revealed that I believe Longlegs is sort of like an intern to the devil, right? Like he's someone who like works for the devil, I guess, but isn't like the devil himself, but maybe has some supernatural aspects to him, or just is really good at creating like fake brains that the devil could talk through. I don't know exactly, but yeah, and that's not exactly explained, and I think that's fine. It doesn't have to explain it. I kind of like actually not explaining that too much. But the story is that, throughout the movie, Lee Harker keeps saying, man, there has to be someone else. Longlegs can't be working alone, which I didn't think the movie really sold me on, other than her just consistently saying that. I kind of would have liked, for me as an audience member, to be able to come to that conclusion myself, or at least agree with her when she's saying that, and not only having that thought in my head because it's getting told to me. But also, like, okay, So Longlegs has to have an apprentice. So that's in my head. Clearly, it's an apprentice. Who's the apprentice going to be? Is it the other detective? Is it one of the little girls? Or is it the mom that we've seen that clearly is is possessed by a demon? Like, I think it's going to be the mom. That feels like the obvious choice right there. It's just not that surprising. I thought the mom was a really cool character though, but it just, it's like, okay, I think I know what's happening here, but that's fine. It's still fun. And, like, the ending itself, again, I think a lot of people are going to be turned off by I've seen online people didn't love, like, the third act. I've actually seen people say, like, loved the first two acts, hated the final act. I was kind of I think this is because I didn't love all the plotting stuff earlier. I had kind of shifted into, like, this is a silly horror movie mode. So once I watched the third act, I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Sure, it's silly and over the top, but, like, to me, I thought some of the other stuff was, too. So again, the way the ending worked, if you haven't seen it yet, is the mom is helping Longlegs and has been helping Longlegs for a while because that was the only way to save Lee Harker's life, is to agree to help and to help them kill other families, or really get the dads of families to kill the rest of the families and then themselves. I guess because then if you kill your family, that probably means you go to hell, I'm assuming. I don't know. Again, wasn't fully explained. Doesn't have to be. There were parts that just confused me about some of the logistics of all of this. Like, the one thing is at the ending, so the dad gets up, the family that is about, that they're working on trying to get to kill, the dad gets up getting ready to kill his wife, and the main character just sits there the whole time, not doing anything. And you're kind of sitting there saying, why aren't you, like, trying to help out at all? Like, what's happening here. Why are you just sitting here? And she basically just lets the wife get stabbed to death, which, I don't know, seemed like you could have, could have helped out a little bit more. Later, she does kill the dad to protect the daughter, and then kills her own mom as well. But then she points the gun to the puppet and, like, tries to shoot it in the head, but there's no bullets, which, like, it's another one of those, like, I don't know if shooting a bullet into a metal ball is a great strategy. I feel like bullets can ricochet. That seems like a bad idea. Of course, this whole movie is also predicated on, hey, this is the list of birth dates when these girls are dying. By the way, agent that is my friend that knows all this information, you have a daughter who's born on that day. Let's think nothing about this information. Like, I feel like I'd be a little bit freaked out about that situation. Maybe, that's something that I think you would probably notice. I think if I had to make a, like, full comparison, I think Barbarian is a good one. Barbarian's a movie that worked a lot more for me, though, because I feel like Barbarian, while also very goofy towards the end, like, definitely had its silly moments. I feel like Barbarian started off very serious and then had the jump cut to the Justin Long character, and then start taking itself a lot more, like, goofy. And I feel like it kind of, its tone just was a lot more consistent for me, or even though it went in wildly different places, I feel like I always felt the emotions that movie was trying to get me to feel. This one was a little bit more tonally all over the place, as it didn't kind of have a clear cut, it felt like it bounced back and forth too much for me. It's an undeniably silly movie with a lot of plot points that don't make sense when you think about them, but when you watch the movie, you tend to not think about them too much because you are wrapped up in some of the great horror aspects, and I will say great. Like, there's that, I mentioned earlier, that creepy doll, like, with a blanket where you can see the eyes. Terrifying. Just absolutely terrifying. And, like, the one moment where you're seeing, like, it's like the point of view of the doll through a mirror. So, like, it looks like the doll is looking at itself through the mirror, but it's like you're the doll. Terrifying. Like, the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, absolutely horrifying. All that stuff. I like the editing. I really like the sound design, too. I didn't mention that, but I thought that did a lot of good stuff to help influence feel. Like, this is a movie that, it just, I mean this in a compliment. It's, like, not a movie that works without, like, if there's no sound, like, if there's no sound design or, like, bad sound design. Like, that made this movie, and I mean that in a positive way. It felt like when they made the movie, they knew, okay, the sound is going to, play a key role on these specific scenes. So, yeah. I think those are kind of my main thoughts on Longlegs. If you still have gotten to the end of the video and, are unsure if you need to watch it, kind of the main thing I would say is that if you like those kind of silly horror movie things, I would say check it out. If you are going to check it out, always worth watching these movies in theaters, even if I feel like horror crowds tend to be the worst crowds in my experience. Still, the sound design makes it worth it, unless you have a great sound design at home. I would say check it out in theaters. But if not, if this isn't your thing, I think, it's not going to be everyone's thing for sure. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Longlegs. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.